I learned a new skill. I can take my mask on and off without tying it every time. I'm surprised no one said anything to me the past 4 weeks or whatever. Just to tie it. Anyway. It's nice to have the rain. Welcome everyone who's here online or outside or in the hall. It all feels starting to feel more together to me, even though this is a strange arrangement in some ways that we have to take these precautions, but I guess our mind can wrap around things given some time and start feeling the connection, even though it's different than what we were used to. Maybe that we're getting used to it now. Today I'd like to continue talking about meditation. And last week, at the beginning of my talk, I mentioned that in our school, oftentimes people are hesitant to talk about meditation, even though it's very central to Zen. In fact, Zen means meditation. And then today, as I was getting ready for my talk, I was like, "Oh, that was a lie. I love to talk about meditation because I really love meditation." And so, so maybe I lied last time. People are hesitant. Maybe I should be more hesitant, but I do love to talk about it. And after the talk last week as well, I decided that this week I would talk about practical advice. Last week I tried to share something about my spirit or my sense about what is beautiful and profound about meditation, and trying to unhook people from a kind of simplistic understanding of what's happening with meditation. Like it's like an exercise program, like unhooking from that kind of mind was one of my goals. And then after giving the talk, I thought, I almost didn't say anything about how to do meditation or what to do or any of those kinds of things. So today that was my goal. We'll see if I get there. Because for me, actually, one of the problems with those kinds of practical things when we focus on them too much is that it's very easy for our mind to draw a box around them and then to call that meditation. Have you ever seen that puzzle where you make 9 dots in a square, three rows of 3? And then you say, can you connect all the dots with 4 straight lines without picking up your pencil? Has anyone seen that? A couple people will. Maybe I'll draw that next time. You can see. But it's really interesting because the answer is not so difficult. It's not so complicated. It's really kind of matter of fact. But what happens is that people draw a border around that square, and then your mind gets locked into it. So when we say meditation, people say, I know what that is, And actually, that's one of our disciplines, is to try to unlearn what we think meditation is. And as we do that, all kinds of things start to emerge. So practical advice, but practical advice shouldn't be just about knowing what meditation is. It should be about learning to forget about what meditation is, so that we can really engage it on a full level. I had mentioned that oftentimes we talk about the relationship between meditation and wisdom. We've been talking with the framework of the 6 perfections, which is one of the oldest teachings within Buddhism about liberation. And the 6 perfections: generosity, ethics, forbearance, vigor, meditation, and wisdom. That wisdom is seen as being what animates the whole process of liberation. You can practice the other 5 without wisdom, and they're good. But when wisdom enters them, they have the capacity for liberation. And so oftentimes the wisdom or dharma is referred to as a medicine. And I'd mentioned that Nagarjuna, one of the great teachers, one of the great ancestors, big proponent of the Prajnaparamita teachings, or these 6 perfections teachings, he talked about meditation as being ingesting the wisdom medicine, or ingesting the medicine of wisdom. How is it that we bring that medicine into our life, and to let it transform the activities of our life into liberation, as opposed to a stricter and stricter, or not stricter isn't the right word, like a more confined way of living. how is meditation about awakening to the Dharma? Sometimes the Dharma gets translated as the law, which sounds kind of, but here what we're talking about with law, which is really the root, I think, of a society that's based in law, why it's important, a society based in law is important, is that hopefully those laws are reflections of something centrally important about a human life. So awakening to the law is about awakening to those deep principles of a human life, of life in general, not only human. When we think about practicality, how to enact that practicality, that ingestion, right? We're talking about what kind of action over theory, right? Not what is my idea about what will happen when I'm meditating, but what is the actuality of meditation, right? Not theory. And what I'm very fond of is poetics. So the poetics are great. I tend to dwell there. But there also is a place that you can just get stuck. You can get stuck in the beauty of it, right? Which is easy for me to get stuck there. It's also easy for me to get stuck in the theory, right? But these places where we just kind of spin a wheel, it's not bad, but does it have traction? That's the question about practicality. So I was thinking, if I were to give practical advice about meditation, one sentence, what would I say? And so I came up with one. Nurture a consistent and profound inquiry into awakening mind. I'll say that again. Nurture a consistent and profound inquiry into awakening mind. I played with that a little bit. I said, nurture a consistent and profound journey of awakening mind. Nurture a consistent and profound exploration of awakening mind. But that what we're doing, what's really practical here, is not all the details about how long you sit and in what shape you sit and all those things, although those are important, and we can talk about some of those. But that what we need to do is see meditation as something which is fundamentally nourishing. Right? And that for it to be nourishing, we have to participate in that nourishment. We have to participate in the nurturing. And it needs to be consistent, and it needs to be profound. If we can work on the consistency and the profundity, then that exploration really takes on a life that you can feel. I was going to say follow, but it's not even quite right. It's not like it goes out in front of you and you follow it. It's like you move together with it. So, if we talk about consistent, the long and the short of it is just do it. You know, I get a swoosh on my robe here or something. Maybe we'll get a big donation from Phil Knight. Just do it. Yeah. Just do it. You know, I was talking last week about the underwater spyglass. Those boxes that sometimes, like the women, they're called amasan, who collect oysters in Japan. They have these boxes. They're made from bamboo, and they didn't used to have glass on the bottom. I don't think. I think they were just like a wrap. Actually, it's maybe thin pieces of wood that are wrapped, kind of like a bucket without a bottom on it. They're about this big around, about that tall, and they would set them down in the water, so you can see into the water. It makes it undisturbed. Right? So now they have glass on the bottom, makes them work even better because the water can't swell up underneath. But I think originally they were just these hoops, basically. And you set them down in the water, and all the little ripples that are catching the light still, and then you can see down in. So just do that, right? Sit quietly. It's not so complicated. You know, Dogen Zenji, the founder of this lineage, tells us to find a quiet place. Give up all your ideas about becoming something. about becoming a Buddha, becoming wise. And just sit. A really boring part of his instructions is like put your right foot on your left thigh and your left foot on your right thigh. Or if you can't do that, just put your left foot on your right thigh. And if we were to continue on there, I would say, if you can't do that, just sit on the bench. If you can't do that, sit on a chair. If you can't do that, lie down. Or even if you can do all of those, maybe sit in a chair or lie down. Don't worry too much about it. But the principle is that you should find the integrity of your body. Right? Finding the integrity of your body. There's something about uprightness, about feeling the gravity, right? About knowing embodiment. Not knowing it, but feeling it directly. Right? So do that. Breathe out a couple times. What thought arises? What will you do with that thought? What inspiration arises? What will you do with that inspiration? Can you even do anything with it? When you push against it, as if that was your action to make it do something, what happens? There's some reaction to that pushing. What do you do? This is why I say inquiry. Not do it right, but inquire directly with the information that is moving through you as you sit quietly. So how does the do become consistent? The just doing gets tricky very, very quickly. Like when you can just sit, like just without much manipulation, just like give yourself 84 gold stars. Or actually don't give yourself 84 gold stars, because then you'll think, oh, I want 84 gold stars, and then you won't be able to just do it anymore. Is really tricky. Because like say you take up a meditation practice consistent, so okay, I was at the temple and the teacher said, for meditation, you should really focus on consistency. And you say, oh, really great. For every week, I sat every day, even for a little bit. I sat at least 5 minutes every day for a week. Oh, which you should. Pat yourself on the back if you do that. But it sets you up for trouble, right? It's like, now I'm good, right? Which wasn't exactly the point of meditating in the first place. It wasn't to be good, right? It was to look into, is to inquire into, right? If I'm really inquiring, sometimes I will feel bad because I meditated. Right? Because I inquired into it, and I'll be like, oh my gosh, I wish I had distracted myself a little bit more, right? So sometimes that's the quality of it. And that's good. We should recognize that's part of who we are. Dogen says to study the self, or to study the way is to study the self. It goes on, he says to study the self is to forget the self. And it goes on and on with different levels, but that level, to study the way is to study the self. Look into it, right? But it gets tricky to be able to just do that very simply, not with a kind of a motivation that is turned by grasping. Now, if we try to practice consistently to develop that discipline, there are a couple ways that I call it 2 flavors of how inconsistency will arise. The first one's really simple. You just stop doing it, right? You just get distracted, whatever. You don't do it. So that's one way in which we can say consistency goes away. Right? But there's another side of consistency, which will eventually lead to the first, and that is by forcing meditation. If you force meditation, that may feel like consistency. If you're the kind of person who finds it fairly easy to decide to do something and then you just carry it out, I hate you. Not really, but maybe a little bit. But some people are like that, right? They're just disciplined people, right? They're like, I decided I'm only going to eat 1,342 calories for 4 weeks, and then I'll shed these extra pounds, whatever it is. I decided I'm going to run this far each day. I just do it. Like some people, for whatever reason, have that kind of discipline. for some reason, my children are like that. I don't know how it happened exactly. They just kind of decide and they do it. That's cool, I find that very difficult. But if you're that kind of person, there's another way to becoming consistent. Or if you're not that kind of a person, but you're trying to be that kind of a person, which is really the more common thing, you'll force yourself to meditate. And in the forcing, you also lose consistency. Right? Because you can't inquire into a divided self. Right? You can't really look in that spyglass because I'm going to sit through this. So how to work with that conundrum? Not stopping meditating, but also not forcing yourself to meditate. Well, I have two approaches. One is called not meditating, and one is called forcing yourself to meditate. and you can use them freely, actually. Right? Because what we want to learn is sitting includes not sitting. Right? Sitting meditation includes not sitting meditation. We have to, some people say you have to get to that level. I say, no, we should start at that level. There's a story I love about Suzuki Roshi, the Suzuki Roshi who founded the San Francisco Zen Center, which is one of the, if not the largest institution of Soto Zen in the West. Powerful teacher. And it's said that one time someone asked him, I'm here every morning sitting meditation with you, but my wife is at home and she's sleeping in. How can I kind of involve her in meditation, or shouldn't I try to get her to meditate as well? And in the story they say Suzuki Roshi got livid instantly. He was so angry. He was like, you know nothing of Zazen. You've never sat meditation in your life. It's really cut into him. This is at least how I imagine the story. That's how I feel about it, actually. Because if you're there sitting in the hall thinking about people who are not sitting, you're not sitting. Right? A mind which is occupied with not meditation is not meditating. Right? That's not what this game is about. This is not a game. This is your life. Right? Or as I heard someone say, yeah, it's a game of your life. Right? The stakes are your life. It's that kind of game. So when we think about this consistency, respect yourself. Respect that inquiry that you have the capacity for, the quality of your mind that you can touch when you use that underwater spyglass. The thing about the underwater spyglass is it also works the other direction. If you've done that, if you get your goggles and you go in the water, it's all kind of wavy like that. And if you get up, just put your goggles just on the water and you can see up, and it's really trippy, right? I never took one of those spyglasses and put them up and looked through the other direction, but I'm pretty sure that would work as well. It's about a looking in and a looking out, which has some clarity, in which the distraction of our normal grasping life is relinquished, and we can allow something to flow. So as you cultivate that discipline with that respect for yourself, that's where the discipline comes from, is a kind of self-respect. And then put yourself on the cushion. Make a place in your house. I'm really big fan of altars. Both because I think that, well, I'll get to the profound part later. Maybe you'll get the sense of why I think altars are so important, but in a very practical way. When you have an altar, every time you walk by it, Buddha's like, hey, meditating over here. Just letting you know, just reminding you. It's doing that. At the temple, we have the practice of when we walk in front of the Buddha altar, the main Buddha altar. Anywhere we are on the property, when we walk in front, we stop and we turn and we bow. And then we walk on. Sometimes when you're doing like a construction project and you have a 65-pound bag of concrete, and you're walking by, sometimes you just do that and keep going, or you think about it and you keep going. But for the most part, we're doing that. When you walk for it, the purpose of that is not to kind of mind control. Well, maybe it's mind release, right? So mind control would be like, we want you to think a certain way. This is like, we want you to Stop thinking a certain way. Right? Turn. There's a reminder there, right? At Thich Nhat Hanh, one of the greatest Zen teachers of our day, at his temple in France called Plum Village, I saw in the video that they ring a bell. It's like maybe once an hour or once every half hour, something like that, and everyone stops. I don't know, it's 30 seconds or a minute or something like that. Everyone stops, no matter what you're doing. In your middle of your paperwork, people registering for a retreat or whatever's going on, people run around, bing, they stop, and then boom. I would probably want to poke people. I think I would have that little bit inspiration to be like, oh, everyone stopped, just like, and see what would happen. That's the not sitting part that I want to make sure is included in the sitting. But that's the way, right? Just remind yourself, you have an altar, it will speak to you. It says, please sit. If you have a cushion or a chair or whatever it is that you sit with, to put it there. Don't put it away or don't use it for other things. Use it for meditation. Right? Just reserve it for that as much as you can. You know? And then create that place. You know, maybe it's better to have it in a room where you can go and be quiet, where you can close the door because there's lots of things going on in your house. That's fine. But try to make it a place that you really have to encounter, not some place that you have to go far away to get to. Maybe you have an altar in the main room and then you have a sitting place and you go to the altar, offer some incense, and then go to the sitting place because, you know, the dogs or whatever will jump on you if you're sitting in the area where everybody is, you know? That's fine. Sometimes I recommend to people to put your sitting cushion between your bed and the bathroom. Because those two seem to be pretty intimately linked. I mean, you know, you got to get up and go to the bathroom usually, brush your teeth or something. And then it's there. You just have to see it, right? And in that seeing, this is really important. You don't look at it and say, oh, I know I'm supposed to do that. Look at that and say, gateway, doorway, invitation. That's all you have to say. You may sit down or you may not, right? But listen to the invitation. Listen to what's inviting you to look in. And then explore, inquire into the sitting and the not sitting. Because as you inquire into that, you'll find what consistency is about. Like one thing you'll find if you sit on a regular basis, most people, they're like, whoa, my life's different. Like the things I'm doing on a day-to-day basis, there's just like some space around it, right? And it's great. And then the space will go away and you'll be like, my emotions are out of control, you know, and then, you know, you'll realize, oh, my emotions have always been out of control. That's why they're emotions. They're not about control, right? And so then you have to find some way to find the spaciousness there in emotion. The Buddha's sitting, the Buddha's meditation is eternal and immediate. In the Lotus Sutra, the Buddha preaches from Vulture Peak, right? Sacred Vulture Peak is usually referred to. And that's where he preaches the Lotus Sutra. And he says, I abide on sacred Vulture Peak and every other dwelling place. That means his sitting is immediately any place you could point out. That's the Dharma he's awakened to. It's everywhere, but it's also each place. It's not just really, really big and it eclipses all of the individual places. It is the wholeness, which includes every single thing, every single being, every single person, every single you. However many you may have. And that eternal and immediate, the all-pervasive and right here quality of the Buddha's meditation is a great support. Because when you see that cushion, when you see did anyone see white butterflies yesterday? Mm-hmm. There were a lot of white butterflies around. Those have, in some traditions, those are quite a nice omen. The angels, and in other traditions they carry away the dead and stuff like that. So That's what angels do too. So anyway, there's a great invitation to meditation. A white butterfly. Support invites you, but it's also a challenge, right? Because this meditation is going on everywhere all the time. It's not just something which I do or is done, but there is also the doing of it. For me, this is one of the most profound teachings that my teacher offered to me, and he never said anything about it. He just sat. When I was looking for a place to sit while living in Sendai, Japan, I've been practicing meditation for a long time, maybe over a decade. And I had studied in different traditions, and I had practiced in different traditions, both within Buddhism and outside of Buddhism. But what I really yearned for was a place where I could just sit with someone who could guide me. And I stumbled across Shurinji Temple. I was living that's my wife's hometown in northern Japan, Sendai. And he was sitting. There's a little note on the gate that said, sitting starts at 5. Come if you like. And so I went in and I asked, and my Dharma brother, the man who became my Dharma brother, he was there, and I asked if I could come, and he kind of looked at me funny. He was like, yeah, if you want to. And so I showed up the next morning, 5 o'clock, and my teacher was there, man who became my teacher, Keira Joshin Roshi. And he was sitting. He showed me how to sit, and then he said, here's a cushion, just sit here. He would always sit in this one place facing an altar in the abbot's, there's kind of a little abbot's section of the main hall. We don't have one here. And he would sit there facing this altar. But really interesting that facing the altar, there were different things there at the altar, but there was this calligraphy that said, fishing for the moon. This is a Zen phrase, to fish for the moon. If you think about the moon reflected in water, right? Enlightenment is just showing up everywhere in the beingness, right? As this bright moon, and we try to catch it, right? And people think like sometimes that saying is like, haha, look how funny people are. They're trying to catch the moon. But that's not what my teacher did. He was fishing for the moon. Always fishing for the moon. It's not a ridiculous endeavor. Right? It's like, I know a few of you at least are Simpsons fans. Did anyone see The Simpsons where Lisa's fishing without a hook? It was so great. That show, I'm not a big Simpsons fan. Like, I don't watch it all the time, but this one I saw, and she's just like, I love it for the tranquility. And she's throwing it, and she reels it out. There's no hook on it. And Homer's like, what are you doing? And she's like, I love it for the tranquility. Anyway, fishing for the moon. Oh, how did I get there? Oh, Hojo-san, Keira Roshi. He just always sat. And so I went and sat with him, and then I went the next day and I sat. And then the next day I was feeling a little tired, so I didn't go sit. And then that went on for a couple weeks. And then one morning I woke up, I was like, I don't want to go sit. And I was like, Keira Roshi's sitting. And it was like, stuck in a good way. I couldn't not go because his continual sitting, he was sitting, the Buddha's sitting. He knew about sitting, he knew about not sitting. So he's just sitting. And when I realized that he was there every morning sitting, I knew that I had to. I'm not saying everyone has to. I'm saying that for me, the challenge of that kind of consistency was met by this kind of profound consistency that wasn't just about narrow discipline. It was about the wholeness of a life expressed through consistent sitting, right? Which is what the Buddha transmitted to us. Buddha I's continual sitting is the sitting of Buddha I, pure faith. That's my teacher's name. We can sit here because he sat. He sits that way. He could sit that way because his teacher sat that way. He could sit that way because Buddha sits that way everywhere. So that is very practical, actually. It doesn't sound practical in the sense of like, how do I get the levers out and put the chain around something and leverage things into place. It's much more directly practical. It's practical in the sense of, what do you care about? Like, if you're doing stuff that you don't care about, that's the least practical thing there is, right? And if you're doing things you don't care about, you have a couple choices. One, you can stop doing them. The other is you can start caring about them, right? And meditation's an invitation to find out why living is important, why life is full of this mind of awakening. When we're working on consistency, we will ultimately get thrown up against the question of profundity, which is a weird word, but I looked it up, it actually exists. Profundity, right? If the consistency will meet the wall of, are we looking in deeply or not? Are we actually exploring, or are we just kind of trying to hold things together on the level of what we think is real? You know, profound comes from the word deep, going beyond the surface, right? Turning attention from being caught by the dream, you know, caught by the one layer that we're grasping as reality at any given time. How do we look more deeply into that, not just take the surface layer of our experience and hold on to it and describe it as being a certain thing? I'm feeling good, I'm feeling bad, I'm feeling elated, I'm feeling down. People are being mean to me, I'm being mean to other people. Things are fair, things are not fair, whatever it is, you know, whatever the quality of that one layer is. Right? Not being caught by the dream of that single layer, but being willing to see something open up, to awaken to something that is beyond that grasping. Last week I talked about expression of habits, that what we're experiencing moment to moment to moment to moment to moment largely is an experience that in its expression of a habit of thinking about things in a certain way, a habit of viewing things in a certain way, a habit of doing things in a certain way. Those habits then appear as our experiences. They're expressions of those habits. It doesn't mean there's nothing that happens outside of that. It just means largely that's what our experience is constructed by. So how do we look more deeply into those habits to find where they unbind and liberation can happen? Not just living through that habit, but seeing some fresh possibility. Fundamentally, our consciousness has that capacity of the total freedom of light. So I thought of 4 things on the practical level in terms of nurturing a consistent and profound inquiry. The first one was, so these are all kind of experiences that happened this week that I think that connect back. I hope they connect back. The first one is, my wife and I, at this time of year, we mostly eat outdoors. We have a little deck off of our kitchen area. And so we have a little table out there. And so mostly we eat out there unless it's raining. One thing that you eat outside this time of year is flies. You know, like they come around, right? And I was thinking about this as my wife's shooing them. My wife always shoos them away. I'm like, what? Just give them a little. Like they're not going to eat that much, right? You know, we can spare a couple bites, but she doesn't like them, so she's chasing them away. And I was thinking about how the way I grew up, and especially I go to my grandparents' house, and there's always fly swatters. Like people had flies. And then I was thinking about my wife's grandparents, I consider them also my grandparents, in Japan, they ran a grocery store, a really classical old style grocery store, and they lived at the store, a really old style house, and talk about flies. And there are those fly strips hanging around, and they'd be like covered with flies. It was so gross. And not nice either. The flies sticks to the thing and everything. And the fly swatter seems a little more merciful, but it also seems a little bit like, why do we have to kill these flies, But I was thinking about how it's so easy for me to think that, because somehow we got created this life where we don't have many flies. You shut the door, you have a screen, you have an air conditioner, you have this whole thing, which some people need. Great. Most people don't need, right? And we've constructed a life. And what it reminded me of is how isolated we are. We are so isolated that a fly will drive us bonkers. To be alive is to be impinged upon. That's what it means to be alive. That you will be impinged upon by other beings. You're not being impinged upon, not living. So on a practical level, although many of the instructions, when you talk about profundity, they talk about retreat, like move back into a quiet place. And that's important. But I would say before doing that, make sure there are flies. Like remove the barriers in which you have exiled the flies to some other realm. Because that's an indication of the self-created isolation, right? In which we're holding ourselves apart from the world. And then retreat becomes just like more walls going up. Rather than many of these instructions, they were written at a time where people were totally impinged upon constantly. Like you might just be home one day and then the marauders decide they're going to take your village over. Like that. And a lot of people still live that way. We don't. We meaning just generally speaking, if you live in North America, right? Again, generally speaking. So the level of impingement on a life, we're generally speaking, again, we're quite spoiled. We have a lot of control. So I take some of the control off. Try leaving your screen door open. Like literally and metaphorically, I mean that. Just like open it up. See what happens. Okay, so that's one practical advice. Open the door. The second one was, I really like to listen to music, usually Friday night, sometimes Saturday evenings. I go on like Pandora and I'll type in someone I like and listen to that as I'm making dinner or something like that. And much to my wife's chagrin, I've become very fond of country music in the past few years, some country music. And I noticed this thing about all singers, but maybe particularly about country singers. You notice how some people are just beautiful. They're just beautiful singers. But the ones that really touch your heart, at least for me, they sing like they're praying. You can feel the prayer of the song. They're throwing themselves beyond the limits of what they think they are. Right? Like you think about how your voice is going out into the world. In a way, it's always escaping from who you think you are, like in a narrow sense. But if you kind of control what you say, you have kind of like, okay, this is kind of me, right? And then there's the place where you throw yourself beyond yourself. You offer yourself. And it comes, maybe with a great lament, or maybe with a great joy, or maybe with something kind of a little strange. But you throw yourself beyond. I was listening to a young artist named Tyler Childers. Has anyone heard of him before? Tyler Childers. If you're at all into that kind of music, highly recommend. I think he's 28 or something. He has a song called Cody's Song. It's about his good friend Cody's grandmother who passed away. And I heard the song. You'll just weep because he does that. Right? Now, this is a place where we get to see in modern society people praying is so hidden to us mostly. I really look forward to the day that I can travel to a Muslim country to hear the call to prayer Like I've heard recordings of it. I've heard people do it at interfaith gatherings and things like that. But I want to be in the place where the call to prayer is like throughout the society. People are like called to throw themselves beyond themselves. Again, I don't know if this is on the line of poetics or practicality, but I think it's very practical. Bring that part of yourself to meditation. Not the part that wants to control who you are, but the part that says, I want to offer this being to the world. And as I look in with the spyglass, I want to throw myself beyond my narrow ways of understanding who I am. Okay, so that's number 2. Number 3, consider your whole life as a sacred text. Consider your whole life. I mean like everything as the story of awakening. There's a fancy word called hermeneutics, I think is the correct pronunciation of it. It's about the study of text, particularly religious texts. And it has to do with the way in which the everythingness, the sacred, the wholeness shows up as a individual person or thing or story or event, and how that event then connects back with the whole. And scholars of religious texts, they use techniques of hermeneutics to enter into text. Very heady. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about heady type of hermeneutics. I'm talking about soulful, direct, on the ground, encountering your life. All the challenges, all the joys, all the things that don't seem that important. How are they telling you the story of awakening? Why do they matter? Everything has meaning. Everything is meaning. Everything is significant. And to treat it that way, as you're doing that in the meditation and your day-to-day life, the sitting and the not sitting, they just do this. Right? It's not like, how do I apply my sitting to my daily life? That's not the question, right? That's like as if the sitting was profound and your daily life wasn't profound, and you're going to take something from sitting and put it over into the not sitting. No, everything's significant. That's what the sitting is about. That's what the not sitting is about. Right? This is a little bit weird, but on a practical level, bow after you go to the bathroom. As you flush, don't just flush and walk away. Flush. Watch it. Think it. Very practical. You do that. You say, this has significance. The thing which my body says no longer need you. You say, yes, but you're still part of the whole. Right? Thank you. It doesn't take very much time. And the last thing I would say, again, the first one, open the door, live with flies. Second one, sing like you're praying, meditate like you're praying. The third one, your whole life is a sacred text. Everything is significant. And the fourth one is you know what it's like when you're someplace. This happened to me yesterday. Every time it happens to me, it breaks my heart open. You're not expecting it, but you turn, and the moon's in the sky. Do you know that feeling? Like when it's really bright moon in a dark sky, it's like you already know it. Like you see some light, and you go, "Oh wow, yeah, it's the moon. Of course, I saw the light." And that one's great, super great. But I'm talking about the one where maybe it's daytime, and there's some clouds, and the moon's just pretending to be a cloud for a while. Yeah. Or maybe it's the one where dusk starts to come and the moon starts to be revealed. Maybe it's a quarter moon, a half moon, a sliver moon, and it's just above the horizon. This is what happened to me last night. It was just above the trees in the neighbor's yard, and you see it, feel that moment. Feel the way that moon just moves through your whole body. Now, I'm not saying that you'll do that and then I'm demanding that you be, awestruck. I'm saying feel for the part of you that is moved. It might just be like, oh, I didn't see it. Exactly. That place from which you didn't notice and then you did notice, that's everywhere, all the time. And the moon is our great, great teacher because of the way that she plays hide and seek and won't follow our, like the sun's kind of easy to deal with. You're like, it's coming up there. It's going to keep doing that day after day. It's going to kind of move north and south, super predictable. We can build monuments and keep track of it with the monuments. And we could build a sundial. It's like quite regular, right? It makes sense. The sun god, that's the quality of the sun god. Regularity, prosperity, make it happen. But the moon, she's different. She's like, this isn't your project, right? This is your noticing. This is your caring, not just as a grasping phenomena, but you're caring as the fundamental attention of your liberated mind. So when you notice something, so the moon's a great teacher that way, but the white butterflies, a banana slug, if you hang out with kids, they're awesome at this, right? And then we're like, oh yeah, I know what a banana slug is. You do not know what a banana slug is. You can't. You have a name for a banana slug. You could pick a banana slug out of a lineup, right? But you don't know what a banana slug is. A banana slug doesn't even know what a banana slug is. A banana slug especially doesn't know what a banana slug is. So if you say banana slug, it's like, oh my, their bodies can get like this big to that big? I don't know how that happens. That like their mass seems to get bigger and smaller. It's crazy. And that slime that comes out, they're beautiful and weird creatures, beyond bone, right? All of our stuff is so bony. That's how we think about the world. I wish I could think about the world the way the banana slug thinks about the world, where bone, if you ever see them go over thorny things, you're just like, how do they do it? The parts of my body that are soft like that, if they were on that thorny thing, would be really bad, right? But not the banana slug. They just slide over. So do you notice? Right at that moment where you notice something, that's what I'm talking about. Bow to that. Recognize it as the profundity of your heart, of your life. That brings about consistency. It's not that we have to consistently notice. It's not only that direction. It's that the noticing will fill you with consistency. And these two work with each other. When you feel frustrated, when you feel like, oh, I haven't really been doing it, you're kind of down on yourself, right? I haven't really been inquiring. I don't know what's wrong with me. You're in that kind of a loop. Open the door, right? Of course, let the flies in, right? Including those flies of your own negative self-talk, right? Throw yourself beyond your sense of who you are. Know that whatever you're doing, even if it has a kind of negative quality, or if you feel like you're not doing meditation the way you wish you were, know that everything that's happening is significant. Care for it in that way. And then notice. And as you're doing that, the cushion's in a place you can see it. Just do it.